This is the Little Moments Count radio podcast, created in partnership with community radio stations throughout Minnesota. Each episode, you'll hear interviews with early childhood experts on how to support the important brain development that takes place in the first 1,000 days of life, just through little moments every day. Learn more at littlemomentscount.org/podcast.
FM 89.9 KMOJ. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. And right about now, Little Moments Count. Little Moments Count. This episode of this afternoon is brought to you in part by Little Moments Count. Little Moments Count is a statewide collaborative focusing on helping parents and caregivers learn about the importance of the brain development in the first 3 years of a young one's life. Nearly 80% of the brain growth happens in the first 1,000 days of a small person's moment when it comes to interactions like talking, playing, reading, singing, and that list goes on. And on the phone line, I got Mr. Brandon Jones. I'd like to say good afternoon to you, and how are you doing?
Good afternoon. I'm doing well. How are you?
Oh, about 6'3" and chilling. That is a definite. For the listening audience, can you give us just a little bit about yourself? I know that when it comes to you, it comes with the mental health department when it comes to being an executive over that way. But then even beyond that, there's a lot of different things that I have no concept of what they mean when we're talking about psychology at Metro State University. But then even beyond that, there's some words I'm looking at. I'm saying, wait, I know I'm going to mess this up. So give us just a little bit about yourself, and then how did you get into this field?
Absolutely. So once again, my name is Brandon Jones, born and raised in St. Paul. Grew up in a household full of trauma and drama. Seen a lot of things as a kid. And ultimately, when I grew up, I decided to become a therapist to work with other folks so that young people didn't have the same opportunities or experiences that I did. And how do we work through them if they do? Currently, I am the executive director of Minnesota Association for Children's Mental Health. That is a mouthful. We go by MACMA for short. And we are a mental health education organization, and we help professionals, we help parents and caregivers and young people navigate these systems of mental health. A little bit of my background for folks who care about education. I have a bachelor's in sociology from the University of Minnesota. I have a master's in community psychology from Metro State and another master's degree in psychotherapy from Adler Graduate School.
Now, when it comes to talking about mental health, and we're talking about a young person's life at the age of 0 to the first heartbeat to when they're born, and then extending it up to those 100 days. Give us just a little bit about when it comes to mental health and how early does it start when it comes to childhood?
Well, mental health starts as soon as a child is developing. It starts in the womb with their mothers. We want to make sure that moms are, developing in a healthy way. So the babies are developing in a healthy way. So minimizing stress is one of the most important things. But once a baby is born, now that development is built around attachment, the baby's own stress development, make sure they're in a healthy environment, making sure their nutrition is good, things of that nature, so that the baby's just developing, because we want their brains to develop in the most healthy manners possible. And that means we have to incorporate like play, we have to incorporate things like tummy time and touch and those type of things with young ones so that they are developing in a healthy manner.
So now when we talk about trauma within itself, because that's one of the other contributions that exist when it comes to, just living and breathing, so when it comes to trauma, and then we talk about generational. And then also from a historical side of it, does it vary or different between different races? Is there a gap, or is it all the same and under one bubble?
Well, it does vary because, racism does play a role in many people's lives. So whether we're looking at historical trauma, intergenerational trauma, or even adverse childhood experiences, we have to take into account that a lot of the stressors and traumatic impacts start before a lot of people are even born. We also have to look at the environmental factors as well. Young people aren't developing in a bubble. They grow in communities, they grow in homes. And if those places are dealing with toxic stress and a lot of trauma, those children are going to be impacted and affected by it as well. So trauma does play a role, and that's why Little Moments Count and other initiatives that are around are really aiming at reducing the traumatic impacts that children have so they can grow in healthy spaces.
Now, when we talk about that, and then we talk about you, and we talk about life within itself, and you're talking about, living life, well, you have this motto, and it talks about purpose on purpose. What exactly does that mean, or what do you elevate between that when it comes to this whole shell?
Absolutely. So I live by the motto, live life on purpose, live life with purpose, on purpose. And really that's about being intentional. Just because somebody goes through a stressful or traumatic situation doesn't have to define who they are. There's a lot of intentionality and opportunity for growth in all individuals, no matter how drastic or detrimental things have been that people have gone through. So making sure that people always know that there is a brighter side, there is things that you can persevere through, and life doesn't end when the trauma begins or when things happen and start. So just being very intentional about our well-being, being very intentional about the folks that we have around us, being very intentional about the settings that we're in, because all those things contribute to our mental and emotional well-being.
Now, we're looking at the mental health, we're looking at trauma, we're looking at all these different things that kind of like cause people to stand away from what's really in front of them. And a lot of times we camouflage a lot of different things. But what would you say to a parent out there or a grandparent or someone who's a caregiver, when it comes to that youngster and giving them that nurturing factor that needs to take place in order for them to continue to grow, but in a great fashion?
Yeah, the number one thing that I would suggest for parents, caregivers, and even educators or folks who work with young people is you have to build an authentic rapport with your children. And I know that looks different for different kids, but building that authentic rapport is what's going to give an opportunity for your child to talk and share about what's going on with them. That means being consistent. That means role modeling healthy behaviors. That means asking questions and not just coming to conclusions and assuming that things are happening that may not be happening with your kids. I'm not saying that you need to be your child's best friend or you need to be your grandchild's best friend, but you do need to build an authentic rapport with them and maintain a balance between a parent, caregiver, or professional and who the young person is, because that power differential, once that's tipped, things can become very difficult to regain that. And it can be very difficult to lean into that young person when they feel like they can't rely on you or they can't lean on you. So building an authentic rapport is very important.
No doubt. And ladies and gentlemen, I'm speaking with Mr. Brandon Jones. And if one would like to get in contact with you or follow you on Facebook or social media or however you like for them to link into you, what would you give us?
Yeah, so if you want to follow me on any social media platforms, you can check me out. On all social medias, I'm by Brandon Jones on all social media. Check out my organization's website. That's macmh.org, macmh.org. You can find tons of mental health resources there as well.
No doubt. Well, I want to say thank you very much for the time and opportunity of locking it in on KMOJ Radio and enlightening us with your presence and your voice. All right?
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. Take care.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And also, ladies and gentlemen, letting you know that you can lock into littlemomentscount.org/podcast, or you can also visit the website at littlemomentscount.org. It's FM 89.9 KMOJ. No question about it. It's the People's Station.
Thanks for listening to the Little Moments Count radio podcast in partnership with community radio stations throughout Minnesota. You can find the Little Moments Count radio podcast wherever you get your podcasts and at littlemomentscount.org/podcast.